choice of song, and he'll tell us all about that. So welcome, Lois, Robert. Thank you guys for being with us. Always a pleasure to have you.
A chance to find out a little bit more about Lois and what makes her tick, etc. What makes her tick. That actual song was chosen by my 15-year-old daughter for Lois, who has no interest whatsoever in shipping, but she really admires what Lois has achieved as a woman in a man's world. So that was the song that she chose to introduce Lois with. So I think we start with I think it's a remarkable story in that I think you were born in, where were you born?
Iowa.
Iowa. So I went obviously to our ship charts, etc., and I couldn't find a port called Iowa. And then I was told that actually it's a state. And not familiar with the states in the middle of the country, I so looked it up, and it was, and still is, actually completely landlocked. It hasn't changed, has it?
No.
Since
The Mississippi River borders us on the east.
Yeah, that's good. So the first question to me begs, how on earth did you get into shipping from Iowa?
No. I've said this before. I mean, it's just the blessing in the United States of the federal academy systems. And my brother went to the Merchant Marine Academy ahead of me, and when I saw that yearbook with all of the pages of the graduates and all their travels, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. And he reached out and pulled me out off the farm.
So, do you think it helped?
Oh my God. I buy my brother really nice gifts. He's at GE Vernova, and I mean, he's also, I find, interesting in industrial business. You know, he's doing North American sales for their turbines, right? And we both, I say that farming actually, even though it seems so disconnected, is almost very similar to shipping because highly asset intensive, highly cyclical. You better be very, very dedicated and have a really long timeline. And then you better pray on the farm for rain, here for good markets.
And that's a great similarity. So, you had what I think is extraordinary in you, especially in these day and age, is that you're one of the few people who are at the top of their companies in the modern world, especially in the public companies, that really came from the real hardcore operating itself. I mean, you'd been to sea, you'd been to the Naval College, you really understand the operations. I mean,
Yeah, no, it's interesting. When I graduated the Merchant Marine Academy, I was dating my now husband, and I had a job offer on an AT&T cable laying ship out of Baltimore, where he happened to be teaching at the Maritime College. And he said, one of my friends said if I knew a young woman, I'd put her on that ship. And I said, I'm going on the chemical tanker. Because I want to see what real operations are like. And, I almost wish I would have went to sea longer because it was just fabulous. You safely move the cargo from point A to point B and you get an A. Now, all of us in our lives, it's how do you ever get an A, right? It was very defined and concrete, and it was kind of wonderful.
I was actually sent to a chemical tanker when I was a trainee.
Really?
Yeah, I was told to go to Rotterdam, because I was in the chartering department, to learn why the hell I should have a greater respect for the captain and the crew.
Oh my God, yeah.
And after 3 days only on that chemical carrier, I realized the lesson that my head of trading wanted to teach me was that it was a hell of a lot easier to work in the office than it was at sea. And I did not want to stay at all anywhere on that ship. So it's
That's funny, yeah.
So how much does that, now let's say you've made it to the top and, you're the man, inverted commas, International Seaways. How much has it helped you in your everyday position now from taking this path right from, cadet all the way through?
I would say, it helps me every day because it's absolutely, and this even comes directly from the farm, it is a team effort. There is no way that, for me, you're the champion. We're the champion. And the team that stuck together, when we went through tough times, you look next to you, either side, you have these incredibly amazing, loyal people. And you think about our seafarers, and I was going to tell you, Robert, so this year in 25, the next year, we're going to do our first female cadet program on our international ships. And it's really hard. I mean, we have a couple thousand seafarers, and I can count on my hands the number of women. And it's tougher for these international women than it is in the Jones Act, I think, because in the Jones Act, you're sailing around the U.S. coast a lot. The terms and conditions are longer at sea, and we're gonna launch that program. And when we do that, I will be talking to these young women that are going to sea, and what they're going to go through. Mm-hmm. And so every day, like even during COVID, when the team first said, oh, let's deviate to the Philippines and take crew off, I was like, what are you, nuts? That's 4 days deviation on a V. Thank God we did it, because it never got any better. But I think you have a little bit of the mindset of what it's like to be that sailor on board and what you're going through and what your challenges are. So we value them, and we should.
So when Sir Isaac Newton was given his awards at the National Society for Science and Mathematics in England, when he taking that award, he thanked those people and said that his success was because he stood on many people's shoulders. Yes. So could you give us a couple of examples or people that you'd like to thank, or how they helped you along the way?
Yeah. Absolutely, and I'll start with my father, who we called Jim, even though he's my real dad, because he was so tough. With 8 kids, he said, you call me Dad or you call me Jim, but you never call me Daddy. And he's up in there in heaven. But when I was trying to hedge my bets to go to Kings Point, I was like, oh, give me a couple $100 to hold my spot at university. He said, you better pick the horse you're going to ride. And thank God that gave me the courage, to go out in the world. And so many, your whole way. When I was at the Merchant Marine Academy, McQuilling Brokers took me in as an intern. And I don't know how many of you remember him, but Jack Ring was just a real Kings Point advocate. And he said, who are you? And I said, I'm nobody. And he took an interest in me. And when I was a third mate, he called me with the job at MOC. And that is the job I have today. So, you just think, but, all these people, Morton's over there, Morton grew the company greatly and gave me opportunity to run a P&L and to learn so much. Dave Fekashese drove the heck out of us on the chartering desk. He was my first boss, and he was amazing. So you look at all these, and the team that I'm surrounded by, Jeff Prebor sitting over there, taught me finance. And, I think a lot of our whole career is, if you don't know, ask, and be lucky enough to be surrounded by really great people.
So it hasn't been kind of a one-way street in your career, right? You had to face a lot of crisis, first sort of putting the company back together again, and then COVID, and all the way through that you've kept the ship afloat, and now it's a thriving company.
Yeah. Thank you.
What were your greatest talk whatever you want to through those periods as just a guideline?
Yeah, I mean, those moments. So, I think we all remember or have heard about, the financial crisis and just it wasn't the initial moments. It was the seeping into every asset class over the period. I mean, I would contend that the shipyards really made very little money until now, since 2008. And, 2010 looked like a little contango in tankers, but essentially 2011, 2012, it was just, really challenging in the industry. And, through, all of that, you just, keep your head down. And then, we had to file for restructuring in 2012. And in comes the restructuring officer, John Ray. He just did FTX bankruptcy, if the cryptocurrency one. So this guy comes plowing in, and I had my team there, and I'm like,
the guy with the dark cloak and the mask, right?
100%.
Just remind me.
Very, very, very sharp, and coming in, because remember, now you're in a situation where you need this. And so I had my team. I'm like, you go to that meeting. I'm going to this meeting, and I came back, and one of my team said, what's happening? I said, I don't know, but that girl's going to be fired. Yeah, that's how it was. And he just went through the company firing people. And then, he kind of came to me, and I'm like, okay, but you have to stand there, and you have to take it. And you also have to say, remember you were looking for a job the day you found this one, because, for example, why I chose the hill to die on is lightering. And he said, they're only making $3.5 million in EBITDA. That's less than that Starbucks over there. I was like, yeah, but I don't own the Starbucks. We don't own Starbucks, right? And I just was like, he would say, get rid of it. And I was like, yeah. And, now they're making $20 million in EBITDA a year, right? And it's an incredible team. And they tell me, Lois, you fired everybody. I'm like, what do you mean? We're only 2 of us down here. I'm like, no, I kept you an accountant. They said, no. We had to pull her back off the to-go pile. I don't remember that. And so I just think it's really interesting. Like, you have your great entrepreneurs. I would say, for me, it's more like stubbornness. And when the house is under threat, we were definitely left for dead. And I kind of didn't get the memo, and my team didn't get the memo. And here we are today, working really hard together to try to create shareholder value and good returns, have, good employment for people, and build the company.
Cool. I know you're a modest person, Lois, and that's to your credit. But we don't necessarily need modesty here now. Okay, so in order to answer the next question, please feel free to not worry about modesty. But what would be your, not in going up in your career, but since you took over the leadership, what would be your proudest moment?
Well, I'll answer that in a couple of ways. And I brought my prop because one of my team members came.
Well, that was a beer for me for a moment, but
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Gave me this can, and I was like, "What the hell is this can?" And he said, Lois, this, because I stuck our symbol on there, right, our logo, and he said, this is the oil can that keeps the light on in the lighthouse. You kept the lights on. And I was like, oh, I put it in a place of honor with a light on it at home. I'm like, wow. And you just have that moment where you're like, well, we kept the lights on, but you just feel like, oh, wow. Gosh, maybe everybody else was thinking that we were a foregone conclusion the other way, and no, it didn't happen. And then I would say, like, really proud moments, really buying the 6 VLCCs from Generate in 2018. I can't, we bought them for cash. It was like $434 million. And we made the pile of sources and uses. And how is it that the pile of uses kept getting higher and the pile of sources was never big enough? And so we're selling, it was such an effort to drag those VLCCs in over the threshold. And it was such a critical moment for us at the company, and now a key component of our fleet, and just really, really valuable. But it was kind of, Doug Wheat, who was our chairman, he chose to believe in us and oversee us rebuilding the company. And those, he didn't, he didn't come from shipping. So he just decided, I'm going to bet on this team. And he supported us, and here we are.
I think, and on that basis, I think you talked about, let's say, the defensive, the grind, the bit of keeping things going, the lights on, and when you never feel better when you're under attack. But the purchase of those VLCCs and the acquisition of Diamond S were both pretty aggressive moves, right? Especially with the balance sheet that you had or did not have at the time, right? So,
no, that's true. I mean, in my 30-year career, I've never seen a worse market than we saw in 2021. We knew that it would be tough because we never saw COVID. We never saw 15 million barrels a day of demand taken off the world stage, right? And then inventories everywhere that had to come down. We know to obey the cycle, to follow that cycle, not to fight the cycle. And you saw that we were mature into the very, very poor markets. And so you're like, okay, looks like world consumption's coming back, inventories are coming down, but when is that going to cross, Robert? And how much money are you losing? How much money were they losing in the meantime? And then the market started to improve in 2022. And then, of course, when Russia invaded Ukraine, it went crazy, right? And we've made a tremendous amount. But, that's